so World of Sleepers is the map for this deciding game between KernelPanic and Seli. So we've already seen, hang on, I can do this. Oh no, there we go. One game apiece, best of three. Yeah, we've seen two very different games really. One that was like a long old grind, pretty low economy, with neither player really successfully getting beyond the sort of one base mark, despite the game running on for quite a long time. And then the other game was a cannon rush that proved to be game ending, with basically a terrible mistake from Seli, letting the Protoss worker into his base by lowering that depot at the wrong time. So this is gateway first, so no cannon rush this time. On the other side of the map we've got very standard opening, just the barracks, the gas building, no proxies, nothing funny like that. To be honest, World of Sleepers, it's a long old walk across this map, so I don't really know about playing a proxy on this. So I was expecting a pretty close series between these two, and here we are in the deciding game. It is close. A pity that the cannon rush closed out the game last time. I would have liked to have seen a bit more action, but cannon rush it's a strat, and it's just one of the things that you've got to figure out how to deal with if you're going to play StarCraft on ladder or whatever. So it looks like Seli's going to come down, have a quick look, and I like that a lot. Just check that there isn't a pylon building here. So has checked for the cannon rush. I'd have also liked a little dive over in this direction, because a pylon here would be just as effective. But it's still good. It's better than not scouting. We've come a long way, haven't we, on our StarCraft journey from the very start of the Noobs League. We're thinking about things. We're doing things like checking for these proxies. We're checking for these cannon rushes. We're getting our expands up. While teching up and while also producing enough units to defend our bases. So CC in production, Reaper in production, Combat Shield being researched, everything looking crisp and together for Seli. The orbital's finished, drops the first mule. When that first mule comes down, you really do notice the spike in minerals that comes after that. So it's not a bad idea to be ready to drop more tech, another barracks or whatever it might be, so that you can utilize those minerals, so that you can get those buildings under construction, the factory or whatever it might be, as soon as you can. In Protoss land, Forge just coming in. I don't think this is for any sort of shenanigans. I think this is just going to be for upgrades, maybe the odd cannon for base defense. On a map like this, obviously Terran has medevacs. They can fly into this location, stim some Marines in, get a bit of work done, and a cannon just buys you time. If the cannon's parked there, you can get that cannon to focus on the medevac, and if the Terran's not careful, they can lose the medevac, which means you clean everything up, and it becomes a very expensive venture. So having a cannon near the mineral line isn't a bad idea at all. This Reaper's just going to come in and be a bit annoying. There are two Zealots here, so KernelPanic rightly just pulls the workers away from the Reaper, and yeah, that's fine. I could... There's various little bits of micro that you can do to keep your workers mining while keeping this Reaper at bay, but it's absolutely fine to just pull the workers. The main thing is that you avoid losing a lot of workers, and that's exactly what he's done here. Look, only one worker killed, and of course the Reaper goes down, which is really important. Now unfortunately KernelPanic has misclicked and returned an awful lot of workers. Look, 10 workers in the gas here. He will need to rectify that pretty quickly. Having more than 3 doesn't increase your gas income anymore, so that is just 7 workers not mining, and that is going to start hurting him. He does have the natural mining away though, and that is ahead of Seli's sort of economy, so still actually leading in the mineral stick. So now that he's rectified that problem, we should see that he has a reasonably substantial margin over his Terran opponent. Of course, Terrans have got mules that they can drop, and once this CC becomes an orbital command, be able to drop 2 mules at a time, and that makes quite a big difference to that income. But do bear in mind, it also means from the Terran point of view, you know, there's a finite amount of minerals here, so if you're dropping mules all the time in your men will of course mine out sooner. You know, the whole thing kind of balances out. From the Protoss point of view, if you're interested in getting your minerals up really quickly, you can just constantly be using the chrono boosts to chrono out workers so that you can get up to that saturation point before the Terran does, and it all kind of balances. I like what I'm seeing here from KernelPanic. You know, we've got the robo down, we're getting things like Immortals out. Did I see an observer somewhere? I felt like I saw an observer. Yes, there it is. And this is great. This is perfect. I love it. Get an observer across the map. Look at what your opponent's doing, and he's seen everything. He's literally there's nothing he doesn't know here. He knows that it's at present sort of this 1-1-1 with the second starport coming down, sees the tech lab as well. You know, so what's this going to be? Cloak Banshees, or is it in fact going to be battle cruisers? We know that the fusion core is there. I don't think KernelPanic has seen that fusion core, so I wouldn't mind another little sweep with this observer just to check, is there any tech hidden in the corners here? This second tech lab should be a giveaway. You know, very unusual that somebody starts building Banshees off two starports, but maybe that is what we're going to see. You know, Banshee cloaking being researched, but if that was the case, why isn't there a Banshee already in production? I don't know. Anyway, siege tanks moving themselves into position, like it. Normally a map like this, I like to have one somewhere about there, one tucked around this corner so that anything coming through here has to go the whole way around the corner to try and get to it. You can position one over here behind these depots. One in this sort of location is also good against any drops or anything. You know, Warp Prism comes around the back, tries to drop in Zealots or something, and the siege tank here will help you clean that up. So it's Seli with the move out. If we look at the army supply, it's in favour of KernelPanic, and given that there are 4 Marines in this bunker and a siege tank at home, and bear in mind your army supply also includes units that are in production, Seli's going to have a hard time making this work. Now, with that said, where is the army for a lot of that supply is actually just in these Immortals, but there's a bunch of Stalkers somewhere. Where? Oh, there they are. Look. Okay, so with those Stalkers at the back, if you can get these siege tanks into position, and with the Marines focused on the Immortals, is going to be the important thing, because Marines do quite well against Immortals. Immortals have that barrier. They're really good at absorbing shells from tanks. They're less good at repeated small damage from things like Marines. But now that the Stalkers come in as well, you can see how good these Immortals fare against the siege tanks. They just get shot in the fist and they don't even care. So yeah, the number advantage, it was always going to be a difficult one to envisage working, but in the end, only took shields off the Nexus and didn't really manage to get a huge amount done. Now, with that said, this defensive position doesn't look terrible. There's 2 more tanks are going to move down here to reinforce. I wouldn't mind this siege tank being behind the depots so that it's harder to get on top of. Needs to pull workers, get repairing. If he repairs this bunker simply won't die. These siege tanks sieging up though are going to do extremely well and are going to meet a huge amount of damage onto these Stalkers. The Marines pop by and everything should get cleaned up here. So both players having a little venture across the map, both players sort of being seen off reasonably well. Economy wise, looking very, very healthy for KernelPanic with the 3rd up and mining. Seli has got the 3rd up, yet to saturate that, and no orbital yet on this command center. I'd like to see him fix that. So a couple of Banshees on the map. Yeah, there are only 2 so far, and only 4 Stalkers at home for KernelPanic. Now there's no upgrades from KernelPanic as yet. It did get this reasonably early forge, but we haven't seen it do anything. Has got the Robo Bay, which does allow things like Colossus, does allow things like disruptors. We've never seen any disruptor play in any of the EMS matches that I can remember, and I'd quite like to, but I'll sort of forgive our players for not opting for them. They do require a bit of micro, and just to use they require some level of micro, but to use effectively, actually you've got to be reasonably on it, controlling those disruptor shots. So yeah, Colossus on the other hand don't really require any micro at all, so I'd like to see some Colossus come out. Immortals are great against armored things, so they're not fantastic against Marines, but they're superb against Marauders, they're superb against siege tanks. So this is a reasonable mixed army. This is pretty good. I'd love to see some upgrades though for these units. I'd like to see at the very least charge for these Zealots. Anyway, it will be the Stalkers that are important as these two Banshees come in. There's no cannon here. These Banshees are going to be able to get a reasonable amount done, and we should see them cloak up as soon as these Stalkers start shooting, and there they go. What Seli needs to do now though is just focus on these workers rather than worrying about the units, because that's where he's going to get the most value. And already you can see quite a lot of workers going down. 13 workers killed is a pretty good start, and you can see that has dented this income significantly for KernelPanic. So has to be careful here, because this cannon will reveal these, and the Stalkers are then just going to clean them up. So shame about that. But reasonable bit of damage done. Arguably I'd have liked to have seen just more of a focus on chasing these workers around and picking them off, and ideally split the Banshees, send one of them over here while one of them is doing the business over here, because then you could really strip this mineral line out, especially if you're distracting your opponent with the Banshee up in the natural. Reasonable chance that you might that this might go unnoticed essentially, and you might clean out that entire mineral line for free. So Warp Prism moving across the map, and I like it. We haven't seen enough Warp Prism play for sure in this competition, and you can get a lot done with a Warp Prism. The beauty of the Prism is if you've got enough gateways at home, you don't need to preload it or anything. You can send it across the map, you can open it up, and you can just warp in 6 Zealots or whatever, send them into your opponent's mineral line, and forget about it, and let it be your opponent's problem to micro about and dance about and try and deal with that. KernelPanic has a huge mineral bank here. So again, we're on 5 gateways, but I'd like to see that doubled. I'd like to see 10 gateways. I'd like to see a second robo. Those types of things, and above all else, I'd really like to see some upgrades happening. I'd love to see Blink, given that his opponent has sort of revealed that Banshees are going to be a thing, so Blink can really help you catch those. And after the Banshees came in the last time, the obvious response arguably would have been to build a cannon here. Unfortunately, there isn't an observer here, and he's building an immortal. What he needs to do is cancel the immortal and chrono out an observer. Observers don't take very long to build, and with the chrono boost on it, you can actually get them out pretty quickly. But really, he should have learned his lesson from the first time and built some sort of detection, built a cannon or whatever. Is the observer coming home from across the map? It isn't. So actually these Banshees can get quite a lot done. Rather than pylons, with this number of Banshees, you could focus on this, you could focus on the side core, you could really limit your opponent's ability to tech. So this observer arrives. I don't even know where that arrived from, but it arrived anyway, and these Banshees now revealed. That's the end of their run. But 31 workers killed is very, very good indeed. And Seli now has a really substantial mineral and gas advantage. Now, with that said, the banks are very, very big. The gas, not so much. So, KernelPanic desperately needs that Twilight Console so that he can get charge for the Zealots, because Zealots don't cost any gas, so you can just crank out, you can flood the map with charge lots, and Zealots with charge are savage. Again, this mining base, you know, had Seli just peeled off even one of the Banshees and parked it over here, it would have got a huge amount done, and KernelPanic's income right now would be down the toilet. No workers in production for KernelPanic, which is interesting. I don't fully understand why that is. He's lost a lot of workers in this game, so he does need to replace those if he wants to keep up in terms of gas income. You can see that like his gas income compared to Seli is miserable. There is no gas being mined here. So here we go. It's not a great fight for the town. A lot of these units seem to be on a move command. I think these battle cruisers are probably going to save the day though, because there just isn't really enough that shoots up here. Needs to focus down the Stalkers really. Not much point in focusing on Mortals. They can't shoot back. Once the Stalkers are gone though, there's really nothing that can contest these, and they blink across the map. I'd have preferred the blink into the men. That's where the stuff is. KernelPanic goes for the recall, but I don't think he's actually got any units that shoot up to recall. But look, he's got a lot of gas, he's got a lot of stuff, so you know, 5 Stalkers going to come in. Needs to use these Stalkers to focus the damaged battlecruiser, because that's the one he's got a chance of killing. This would be so much easier if he had blink. Ideally, you know, he's lost that base, kind of, he's got to suck that up. Ideally, 10 Stalkers would see this off pretty handily. You know, 10 Stalkers would one-shot this, and then you're probably run. So hasn't mined this side, and that's kind of problematic. If these units just fly along in this direction, they can come down here and harass this, and it's a really long walk for KernelPanic to get around here. So 10 Stalkers do come out. They are not focusing the weakened battlecruiser, and that's going to cost them dearly. So actually take on the healthier battlecruiser first, which obviously takes much longer to die. Still, this weak battlecruiser has barely taken any additional damage. So really, you know, a bit of a misstep there. Had he right-clicked on that battlecruiser to begin with, the Stalkers would have one-shotted it. This battlecruiser is so badly damaged. Now these 3 additional battlecruisers that blinked into the back of the men while I wasn't looking are potentially going to end the game actually. If we look at the gas for KernelPanic, he's still got some gas, so he can sort of warp in another round of Stalkers, and that will be useful. But actually, as this pylon goes down, he's going to find that he's only got 2 gateways, and 2 Stalkers can't hope to take this on at all. With so much minerals in the bank, it's a little inexcusable to still only have 5 warp gates. You know, you're at a point in the game where you've got a 3rd mine in. It's actually almost mined out. You know, with all of those minerals, why wouldn't you have turned like a couple of thousand of that into gateways? And had you done that, you would have had that option to just hold down the tap W, hold down the S button, and just wang in enough Stalkers to clean that up. So it's that sort of lack of production that we've seen before that's really done the damage here. These Immortals aren't actually shooting, they're on a move command. Immortals will focus on a bunker really well, but obviously with nothing to shoot up, KernelPanic a little disappointed by his own performance there, losing out to things in the sky when he's committed hard to that robo. So it's Seli that takes the victory. It's Seli that goes through and takes the final place in the quarters in the round of it. Yeah, GG.